Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Krisler's Convos. If you are new here and you haven't ever been a part of the conversation, all we do is just chat with our guests to hear their story about their health journey and how they've used functional medicine along the way. Today, I am joined by Rachel. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so
Good.
excited to have you. We've had to kind of go back and forth on dates and whatnot. So I'm glad that we were able to connect. And I'm excited to hear a little bit about your story. Before we get to that, tell everybody who you are, where you are from, and what you do.
Well, thank you, Krisler, and I'm so happy to be here. As I was saying before we started, I think this is just such a wonderful platform to, actually get an idea and put it out into the world about how much functional medicine and holistic practices can really heal. So thank you for having me. My name is Rachel McGrath, and I'm a nationally board certified health and wellness coach. I'm also a functional medicine certified health coach through FMCA, which is Functional Medicine Coaching Academy. And I also own my own business called Cilantro Road Lifestyle Medicine. I am a lover of all things self-discovery and just really, really thrilled to be here.
Awesome. Yes, the self-discovery piece is amazing. When you are speaking with clients and they have those aha moments and the light bulbs start going off, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's start with why you decided to become a health coach.
Yes. So most of my life, I always kind of leaned toward a more natural kind of way of living, but it really wasn't until about 2013 and 2014 that I was diagnosed with two autoimmune conditions. In 2013, I was diagnosed with celiac disease. Mm-hmm. And then in 2014, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called dermatomyositis, which targets your muscles and skin. So, when I was diagnosed in 2013 with celiac, it was about a year I kind of went on that protocol, which was basically no gluten, but I still wasn't feeling better. In fact, I was, there wasn't much that was different. And then at that point, I started, kind of my body reacted. I had a rash. I had, just a lot of things going on in my skin. So, at that point, I kind of really dove in. Nobody knew what was happening for me at all. A lot of doctors were just kind of like, yeah, we're not sure. And one particular, I went to a urgent care, and I want to mention this because shout out to them. They looked at me and they said they didn't know what it was, and that they felt like it was pretty systemic, and that they could not do they couldn't treat me. They couldn't give me anything at that point because they didn't know what it was. And I just wanted to note that because, in conventional medicine, a lot of the times they throw just whatever at you, a pill. Mm-hmm. And this particular physician didn't. And I really appreciated that, even though I was like, somebody help me,
Right.
Just give me anything at that point. I did appreciate that they, they said, we don't know. So, fast forward a little bit, I finally went to actually a dermatologist, and he looked at me and he said, he thought it was either, two different autoimmune conditions. And it ended up being the dermatomyositis. So at that point is when I really understood what was happening. And then, after that, I had gone to a number of conventional doctors, and I had to go to a rheumatologist, and, she wanted to put me on some pretty heavy duty medication. And at the time, I didn't want to do that. You know, I felt like I wanted to go a more natural route, but at the same time, my body was in such a state that, you know, she had said to me, you know, at this point, you really do need the medication. And, you know, there was a whole slew of side effects, and one of them being going into early menopause. And so I started to bawl. But I also knew at that time that, you know, I needed to work with conventional medicine for sure. I needed to take the medication. I needed to calm my body down and get it into more of a, you know, a state that it wasn't so inflamed. So I ended up going on medication. But at that moment, I told myself, I'm going to do whatever it takes to kind of counterbalance, right? So I'm going to do the research on other holistic practices. I'm going to use this time to kind of use conventional, you know, and naturopathic medicine or functional medicine in combination to get myself to a place where, you know, I felt like I was really beginning to heal. And so that's what I did. You know, I dove in and I found functional medicine really. And from there, I went on the protocol for functional medicine, and it completely changed my life. I mean, it just, you know, taking the medication and then dealing with root cause was a perfect combination for me. And I think in general, just from my own experience, but also with clients that I work with, that just seems to be, you know, such a good marriage in the beginning. So at that point, you know, I started to heal myself, and it was interesting because about 1.5 years into the process, my body started to reject the medication, which was interesting, right? So I started to feel really sick on the medication, even though this medication was, the side effects were nausea and things like that. But for the whole time, you know, taking it didn't make me sick. But there was a certain point where it started to, and I was like, that's really interesting to me. That's very interesting to me. You know, and I went to my rheumatologist and I told her, I think that I want to get off the medication. I think my body's telling me that it might be time. And for her, you know, I appreciated her honesty, was she didn't want me to. And that, you know, she felt like if I wanted her to kind of agree with me, it wasn't going to happen. And, you know, kudos to her for being really honest about that. But what I did do is I just took the protocol. I started to wean myself off, and I never looked back. And I wholeheartedly believe that it was because my body was at a point where it didn't need it anymore, because of the root cause, dealing with root cause and nutrition and all the things that go with that to heal your body.
Yeah.
So, you know, from there, of course, that just exploded, you know, in my heart about wanting to share this with others, the journey, and get into functional medicine. And then, you know, I just started thinking about a program I wanted to, and really just the program for me was just to learn more. And so I found FMCA, and that's kind of how I started and became a health coach.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, every time I do one of these conversations, I'm so curious to hear how people found functional medicine, why they became a functional medicine practitioner, whether that is a doctor or a nurse practitioner, whatever it is, because we all have our own individual stories that lead us down this path. And lo and behold,
here we are.
we find it. And it's like, oh my goodness. Yeah. All these individuals still converging on this same thing, which is really cool.
Yeah. And, you know, it kind of led me to, you know, I want to backtrack a little bit. When I was going through things, you know, health is a holistic approach. You know, anybody that's been through a health journey or a health story, and I do feel begins to understand that. Right. It's not just one thing, and that everything in our body is connected. And it was interesting because when I was trying to figure out what this was, before they diagnosed the second autoimmune, dear friends of mine recommended me going to a nutritionist. And, I was in such a state that, I was willing to try anything, but I also was like, what's food going to do? I need something that's going to, so I went to this nutritionist, and interestingly enough, the first question that she asked me was, what is your relationship with anger? And I was like, I was mad, ironically. It made me mad. I was like, what do you mean anger? I mean, I'm here in this state. Why are you asking me about this? And I have to say, though, that it was the one question that I took away with like, why did she ask me that? And it was the most profound question, actually, out of anybody I saw. And so then it kind of led me down this path to like, what is my relationship with my emotions, with anger in particular? She's like, your body's angry, so I wanted to add that too, that piece, because I think that, we can get stuck in the conventional model, and it doesn't necessarily address the full picture. And, really disease in my opinion, and, with my journey, it's your body is out of alignment. It's out of alignment. And there are so many variables, of course. But to take a look at all of it is really crucial, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious to hear about your celiac diagnosis, and how did that come about? What were you experiencing that, led you to doctors and led you to go, this is just not right. Let me look into this.
So I'm so glad you asked that question, because it is something that I wanted to touch upon. So before celiac, I felt pretty good. I had some digestive issues, anxiety. I mean, I knew that I was kind of, in my personality, I had kind of a anxious way of being and things like that. So, but for the most part, I ate anything I wanted to, felt pretty good. Or at least I thought I was feeling pretty good, which is a whole nother piece, right? When you get healthy, you realize, wow, I don't think I've ever felt really good. But what happened with celiac was, and this reminds me of the conversation you were having with Dr. E. There is a piece in there that you touched upon, and it's about triggers. And what happened is my, one of my best friends died tragically in 2013.
Oh, wow.
So at that time, I'd never in my life lost somebody that I cared that much about, in that way, where it was here today, gone tomorrow. And at the time I thought I was just so much grief. But I wasn't being able to do what I could do, which was, I'm a big outdoors person. And so I hike a lot, and I went away on a hiking trip, and it was a hard hike, but it was nothing that I wasn't able to do. And I couldn't do it. I was so tired. I just couldn't get through it. And, somebody I was dating at the time, he was like, I think you should get, this isn't normal. And so I ended up going from that point. I started this whole, something's going on with me. I'm really tired. I'm like this. I think I'm just grieving. But then the blood work came back, and it was like, oh, no. There's something going on. My levels were so low. I think the nurse practitioner was like, I don't even know how you're walking with these levels this low. So it was at that point that it just started, and I started having digestive issues. It was almost like, and this takes me back to your conversation with Dr. E. It was like something triggers it, maybe there's an event, right? And I, in retrospect, really believe that, losing my friend really kind of, I think shifted something and triggered something within that, was already probably there.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So, we learned so much about, and just in functional medicine in general, we learned so much about this whole person approach, and that from the time you are really even in your mother's womb, there's so much going on with you, and you're taking things in visually, you're eating things, you're hearing things, you're feeling things on your skin. All of those things are having an effect on us. And as you said, you were anxious, but thought maybe that was just a part of your personality. And, there were some seemingly minor things happening, right? Some digestive things, and they weren't constant, or they weren't super painful.
Right.
It was like, not that big of a deal. Maybe I just ate too much cheese yesterday, or whatever it
Right.
was, and no big deal. And I think for so many of us, we go through our days thinking, oh, I have a headache, that, whatever, it's not that big of a deal. I'll pop some meds and I'll be fine. Not realizing that these little things we are dealing with and enduring and smelling and tasting and experiencing, they're adding to our bucket. They're adding to our dis-ease bucket. And then we have those events like you had that are traumatic. It could be the loss of a friend, the loss of a family member, the loss of a job, whatever it might be. And that just sends our bucket spilling over, right? And then we're like, whoa, what is happening?
Right.
And, I think with functional medicine, the idea is not to get to that point, not to ignore the smaller signs, to think in a more preventative type way, right? So that when those events do happen, because they're going to happen, unfortunately, that our bodies are able to adjust to them, that we are able to process those emotions in a healthy way, and, those types of things. So when you started investigating this, what did you do? Where did you go?
So, I wanted to make one comment too, was, as you were saying about, our life, as our life progresses, there are things that are happening, that are filling the bucket. And when I think about, from childhood on, there were events that happened, there were, certain ways of conditioning in your home environment that you have to kind of do. When I was young, my mom said, we always thought you were hypoglycemic because I would have these spikes and down. Mm-hmm. And at the time, they didn't think food, nothing was at that time. So as you start to, go back and look at things, you think I was already probably in that, allergic or hypoglycemic or gluten intolerant. And, most of my life too, I wouldn't say severe, but low grade depression. That's from food too. Or my body has never been able to really deal with sugar, but everyone was just like, whatever. So it is very interesting when you go back and think, wow, I think all of my life, this was starting to, was building up to this point in a way. And so once they diagnosed me with celiac, I went to the dietitian, through, the medical center. And I have to say it was just not helpful. It was like, go off gluten, and that was it. So I just went off gluten, and I started, I just felt very alone. Like I didn't really know, okay, I'll just go off gluten. Well, read labels. I'm reading all these labels, and then, gluten-free things are like packed with sugar. So most of them, you don't, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of them, that's not a good alternative either. So, I was just doing the best I could, but like I said in the beginning, I just wasn't feeling better. Mm-hmm. Like I just wasn't feeling better. If anything, I might have even felt more alone in the process, because I didn't understand, okay, I'll go off gluten, but that's not working either. So what is wrong with me? Right. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't seeing anyone at the time for functional medicine. It wasn't until I got diagnosed with the second one was when I was like, okay, I need to really look at, when I need to really look at everything. It was recommended a functional medicine, doctor. And I just thought, okay, because something's really wrong, this is the second diagnosis, right? And something's really trying to get my attention on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm curious how you found your functional medicine practitioner. People find them in all kinds of ways. They get on Google and they just search, nearby, or they hear it from a friend. So how did you find your practitioner?
So, like I said in the beginning, I've always been very curious about a more, holistic approach. It's a time too, like building up. So a few years before getting diagnosed, I was diving deep into a yoga practice and a lot of other things. And at that time, I had some friends that were like, I think you should really look into functional medicine. And so they recommended Functional Medicine of Idaho. So that's where I ended up kind of going and thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I split my time between Idaho and California. And so I also had someone in California that they were actually the ones that recommended this dermatologist to me that actually ended up figuring it out. So it was through friends, mutual, kind of in the holistic community. Yeah.
It's very helpful to have people who are like-minded.
Yes.
Where you can kind of talk things through. They don't make you feel like a weirdo. And, they listen and they go, you know what, maybe this person can help you. And so you've got that community of, resources that you never know what could come your way, where, you're just having a conversation with friends and they say, you know what, maybe this person can help you.
Exactly. And so for anyone that's looking, I would suggest, if you're curious about it, if anybody that's even watching these videos, they could reach out to you. They could reach out to anybody that might have some resources around, functional medicine or naturopathic medicine or whatever, starts to call them on a certain level regarding their health.
Yeah.
And you can Google, you can always Google. Right.
Right. Yeah. It is very helpful to have those resources on hand and to have those trusted people that you can connect with. The minute that I started, networking with people and, towards the end of the program, just started connecting and meeting doctors and things like that, I was like, can I come to your office? Can I see how your process works? Can you tell me, can I meet your front office person? Because if I'm going to give a resource to somebody, I want to know who's working there. I want to know if they're going to be friendly when you show up. I want to know what their pricing is. I want to know what their structure looks like, because, somebody may say, well, I can afford this, but I can't afford this. Or, I'm looking for somebody who does these things or has this as part of their practice. So having all of those resources pooled, when somebody says, hey, I'm looking for a functional medicine doctor, I can say, hey, here's some of those resources available. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you were now going through this issue of trying to figure out what was going on with your skin, can you describe what was happening that was like, was it pain? I think you mentioned rashes. Kind of describe what was going on with you.
So it was incredibly inflamed. Like I had patches, patches of, I wouldn't call it eczema, but I would call it, hive, but, more of just a full rash. And it was painful and it was red and it itched and I was sore. So, it wasn't like particular sores, but it was like patches of rashes,
and was it localized somewhere or was it all over?
It was all over. It was, I mean, it was on kind of my like back, lower back, upper hip area. It was on all over my leg, my shins, leg. It was pretty much, it was showing up everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not so much on, yes, it was on my face, because at the time the dermatologist was like, this is either lupus or dermatomyositis, because of the rash that it was on my face, kind of was like butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was just kind of one day, actually.
Really? It just showed up.
Yeah. And a part of me was like, that it's just so interesting too, because I went off gluten, and I still wasn't feeling better. So I don't know, I don't know if it was my body's way of just like, okay, we're going to show you this so you can dive a little bit deeper. Because I was so focused on all it was celiac. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was just it was kind of like it was an obvious thing that I couldn't get into the sun either. Does that just, hurt me, and the rash too? With my dermatomyositis, there's a 50% chance upon being diagnosed that you're in a malignant process already. So that was also kind of a scary thing to think at the moment too. And what I've learned is the autoimmune, there's not, I think I think the medical, I think treatments for autoimmunity, we're still figuring out, or, and what that actually is. And yeah.
Oh goodness, that does not sound any pleasant at all.
What happened at the time was the medication started to work. And then, when I started working with the functional medicine, we went on an elimination diet, and I will say that the elimination diet was like the best thing that I could have done, because it was food. When I first was food tested from a naturopathic doctor, because I was working with a naturopathic doctor and functional medicine. And when the naturopathic doctor did the testing for the foods, it came back that I was allergic to everything. She was like, you're not allergic to everything, but your body is in such a state that it's reacting to everything, everything. Right. Yeah. So of course I was like, oh, how could I be allergic to all food? So, so we just needed to like get rid of, I went on basically vegetables and a little bit of meat and things like that. And I have never, after that elimination diet, I started bringing things back. But for the most part, I actually, for things that I know are known allergens that I've been told that my body doesn't react well to, I've just kept, I basically now I'm on paleo is basically what I eat. But it was the elimination diet was really the kind of the turning point, to feeling a lot better when I started to understand, that my body was in such a reactive state, calming it down, and then starting from there was life-changing.
Yeah.
And just how
something earlier, you mentioned, how you thought you felt okay. And then later, once you got on this healing journey and really started making the changes where your body really was feeling well, you didn't realize like before that, that you weren't quite feeling well. And I've had people say to me, I never knew I could feel this good. And
I never,
it's just, it's like, wow, that's a powerful statement. It's kind of sad, but exciting at the same time. Uh-oh, we're frozen.
Yeah. It, I think that from that, I did realize how much I wasn't how much that quite possibly I hadn't felt good at all. Like, and that, you know, a lot of us might not understand what it means to feel really, really good. We're so used to feeling the way that we feel, that as the norm. And I think that that's what a huge benefit out of, you know, going a functional medicine route gives you. I mean, it gives you back this, you know, ability to feel really vibrant, to feel like you're thriving. You know, with the clients that I see, you know, we really focus on, to begin with, what is your self-care routine? You know, what do you do for you? Right? Do you even know what that means? You know, because I truly believe that it's the relationship we hold with ourselves that our choices come from, right? So before you really get into a lot of, you know, set goals or things like that, I think it's imperative to kind of go within and kind of think, you know, what do I do for me? How do I feel? How much joy do I experience in my life? You know, those kinds of questions, you know, and I think that, because I think that, you know, once we get to a place where we kind of dive a little bit deeper within ourselves and that relationship, that, you know, a lot of positive changes we can sustain, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Those questions are very important. And that goes back to the excitement of self-discovery and becoming more aware of your needs, your desires, you know, the things that bring you joy, the things that run you down, the boundaries you have or don't have, you know, all of those things play a part in how well you feel and how your body's functioning. Yeah.
It goes back to that holistic picture, right? And those are really important pieces that I don't think that that we give enough credit to at all, especially, you know, in symptom only management.
Yeah. So since we are on the topic of self-care,
yes,
what are some things that you do now that maybe you didn't do in the past because you weren't aware of them or you weren't giving yourself that time? You know, what's on the self-care agenda for you these days?
Yeah, these days. So of course it's been a, you know, self-care has been a journey kind of to look back on. And I definitely think that it's, you know, it's in itself, it's a journey because it's, you know, it's your relationship with you. But to current date, you know, my three go-tos are I journal every morning. I set that time aside. And I meditate every morning. I also lean on a pretty hearty yoga practice. And so when you just have a little bit of time too, you know, people can figure out what works best for them, right? It doesn't have to be an hour yoga class, or if you're limited in time, right? Maybe, you know, I say to people every morning, like there's a lot of, you know, I see a lot of clients, and then even in my own life, it was like, I don't have time. You know, I'm out the door and, you know, people have kids and schedules and husbands and families and all these things. And my thought around that is, okay, what is something that we do every day, right? Like we all usually most of us have coffee or a tea or something that we enjoy, right? And, you know, maybe during that time you take 15 minutes to really enjoy it, right? A lot of it is habitual of just putting it in our mouths. We don't even really taste it anymore. We don't feel the warmth of it anymore. We don't appreciate, you know, the smell of it anymore. So in those ways, those are really, really little things that we can start to do that gets us sort of connected to, you know, bringing it back to within, right?
Yeah.
So, so really journaling to me is I've done all my life, which is, I'm super grateful for. It's always been something that kind of anchors me. So that's another really great way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. And as you were talking, I was thinking about a client of mine who I coached through the elimination reintroduction process. And, kicking out caffeine, she was like, I'm not really so sure about this, but okay, I'm all in, so I'm going to do it. And after the first about 4 days, we were having a conversation about how things were going. And we were talking about how it wasn't really about the caffeine necessarily. It was a part of her morning routine, and she lives in a very cold environment. So, she talked about holding the mug and, being in the quiet time when her kids weren't up yet and her husband wasn't around yet. It was just her and her cup of coffee and just the warmth of it. And so just having that understanding of what she was doing every day, why she was missing her coffee, and other things that she could do during this, process that could kind of substitute for that and help her get through that routine. So yeah, knowing those things, knowing what really stokes your fire,
Right.
what it really is about having the coffee. Is it really the
Right.
coffee? Is it the caffeine? Is it the time alone?
Right.
What is it? That really is going to help you, move forward in a much more advantageous way.
Right. And it starts, lifestyle changes are hard. They are just really hard, especially when we've done something all of our life. We have a certain conditioning. They're hard to get out of, and they can be super overwhelming, especially if you've had diagnosis or if you've been told, you need to give up this, this, and this. That can be really, because, as human beings, we're attached to certain things for certain reasons, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that these really small ways get us, first of all, don't overwhelm us, right? We start to realize, okay, we start to bring the awareness back with smaller doses that really set us more there. And I just, I'm a huge proponent of taking things really, step by step and small to not overwhelm the process, really.
Yeah.
Because to able to sustain changes, fast and furious may work for some people, but usually it's kind of slow and steady.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's the beautiful thing about working with a coach, because we do spend time digging in with people to help them figure out what's really going on, kind of going back to the question that your nutritionist asked you, right? So we help them dig into what's going on, why it's happening, how it's happening, when does it happen, all of those things to help them make those connections to find out, okay, what's really going to work for you right now?
Right.
If you are a career woman, or if you are a single dad, or, whatever your life circumstances are, there's going to be difficulties with that. And we don't want to add difficulties.
Right. Right, exactly.
And we're certainly not going to fuss at you like your butt. I'm not your mother, I'm your coach.
Right.
And so we're going to, work with you and help you to figure out how to weave in those beneficial changes so they are sustainable and you do feel good about what you're doing.
Right. And like you said, like we've been discussing, we want to start earlier with some of these changes. I mean, preventative way of living, preventative medicine, however you want to call it, really is healthcare. It is healthcare. Mm-hmm. And so if, we can just start, even if it's in small increments of getting to a point where, we kind of take that back for ourselves, that we are in charge of our own health, and we are, we all have the innate ability within to heal. and to kind of break it down in ways that, you know, people are really, it's really tangible for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, if there's somebody out there who's like, man, this sounds like something I need, but they're kind of still on the fence. They're like, I don't know, it sounds a little woo-woo.
Yeah.
Sounds like I need it. You know, what would you say to them to encourage them to seek help?
You know, what I would actually say is, you know, they have a piece of curiosity there. You know, if they're even thinking about, I wonder what that's about. I don't know. I mean, they're right there as you have something saying, I wonder what that's about. And I would build off that. You know, I would just say, well, why are you curious about that? What is it about it that piques your interest? You know, and kind of start to uncover in that way, you know, and see what comes, right? But that would be the first question I would ask, because, you know, their hearts or their minds or their bodies or whatever you want to call it, their spirits they're curious about it. They've heard about it and it's piqued something within them. And I believe wholeheartedly that it's kind of working with that within ourselves that is what carries us through, right? It's what we're being called from within or from without, however you want to say it, to explore that option. So, and I think that that's, you know, I mean, I just think that that's what Health Journey is about. It's about exploring options, seeing what works, listening to yourself, all of those things.
Yeah, right on. Totally agree with that. Well, Miss Rachael, oh my goodness, this has been awesome. What a great conversation.
I've loved it.
I know that people watching are going to be really inspired and take away some good nuggets from you. So thank you for this.
Yeah, thank you.
If people want to know more, if they want to connect or ask questions, where can they find you?
So you can visit my website if you want to, you know, kind of explore and see what I do more in depth there. And that's at solutions.Rachael.com. Or you can reach out to me at Rachael, RACHAEL at solutions.Rachael.com.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Well, I will make sure to put that in the description of the show as well. And again, thank you. I definitely enjoyed our conversation today. And for all of you out there who are watching this video, I so appreciate you. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the convos. And let us know in the comments what you thought about the conversation. What was your favorite part? Until next time, I'll see ya. Bye.
Bye, Krisler.